latest round of fighting in the Middle East. They say mortar fire from Gaza killed an Israeli man near a border crossing. Meantime, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is threatening great force against Hamas after the militants rejected a plan for a ceasefire. The Israeli military reports its forces launched at least a dozen airstrikes on Gaza after Hamas turned down the proposal from Egypt. Of course, largely the reason they turned it down is because none of the demands of Hamas were even discussed. They weren't even mentioned in this peace plan. Many on the Hamas side say they felt rejected, even snubbed. Israeli officials say they agreed to the plan, but Hamas militants did not and kept right on firing rockets. The Israeli military reports some of those rockets reached deep into Israel, including near the northern port city of Haifa. See, this is the Gaza down here. That's the Gaza right on the sea. This is the West Bank. So all the firing is coming from here in the Gaza. There's Tel Aviv. They've been close to Tel Aviv before this incursion, but not all the way there. They've gotten there this time. You see Haifa way at the top. There's a very important power plant up there that the militants would love to hit. So far, thankfully, they've not been able to do that. Sirens also reportedly went off this morning in those towns 60 miles north of the Gaza. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is condemning the Hamas attacks and says the White House will continue pushing for a ceasefire. Easier said than done when both sides are not represented at the table. Our John Huddy is live. He's in Gaza City tonight. What's the situation on the ground there like tonight?
Well, Shepard, I was just kind of looking over my shoulder right before you tossed to me because there was an airstrike just moments ago. The night sky has been illuminated a couple times here in Gaza City over the course of the last few minutes. Rocket launches and then airstrikes like the one I just mentioned. So that continues tonight in the wake of this ceasefire agreement that broke down. Israel, as you mentioned, accepted it for about 7 hours. They held off on firing at Hamas starting around 9 a.m. local time here in Gaza, and over that period of time, Hamas fired about 70 rockets at Israel. So after about 7 hours, Israel finally had enough and launched several missile strikes, including one that we saw earlier this afternoon that shook the building that we're in. So far, and you mentioned this at the top, Shepard, one person has now lost their life in Israel. Throughout the course of the last 8 days since all of this started, only a couple people have been injured in Israel. Well, now we're getting word that a man was killed by, according to Israeli officials, Hamas mortar fire on the Israel-Gaza border. So that's the first fatality. There's been some damage, some injuries, but that's the first fatality. Meanwhile, on the other side of the border here in Gaza, close to 200 Palestinians have been killed and more than 1,200 have been injured. And at this point, Shepard, more than 17,000 remain in UN shelters, including one that we went to the other day. And a lot of these people just escaped their homes with nothing but the clothing they were wearing, and also some didn't even have shoes on, Shepard.
Prime Minister Netanyahu over in Israel spoke to the nation. What did he say tonight?
Well, he said that Israel was going to exert, quote-unquote, great force against Hamas because of Hamas's unwillingness to sit at the table or accept a ceasefire agreement. And many in Israel's cabinet are calling for a ground invasion. They're calling for things to step up even more, to go from forget just the aerials and heavy artillery fire, but some actually want troops on the ground to come into Gaza and occupy Gaza. So really, at this point, Shepard, we're waiting to see if everything kind of intensifies through the night, and based on the last 8 days, we're assuming that will be the case. We'll see.
John Huddy for us from the Gaza side of things. John, thanks very much.